And another note from Bishop Charles. Michael's ticket to New Zealand was somewhat unusual. His provincial asked him to accompany a 12-seater Ford Transit minibus to New Zealand, mercifully by sea and not land. True to the Rosminian charism, he unhesitatingly said yes. Michael packed up his humble bag and set forth from the rather upmarket Ratcliffe College in Leicestershire in England to the newly established St. Peter's College in Gore. Adventure describes well Michael's life of service, not just geographical adventure, but pastoral too. Teacher of physics and RE, a principal, retreat director, national director of adult formation, founder of a monthly periodical, a writer of scholarly yet accessible texts, Michael relished every task ahead of him. And underlying all these roles was something deeper: friendship and an encouragement of others along their journeys of faith and discovery. Michael always encountered the whole person, and in his presence one felt he was giving his total self. That, I think, is a true mark of holiness. Dunedin, with its vibrant cultural and intellectual life, was a source of great joy and stimulus for Michael. From the farmers' market to university lectures, from book clubs to the Dunedin Town Hall, Michael was at home as an acute observer and participant. Michael's pen was sharper than his tongue. While always mild-mannered in person, he never shied away in his many articles and the editorials from upholding justice and common sense, or drawing attention to the principles he believed should guide us as people of faith. Sometimes this meant he crossed swords with those in authority. He did so always in a gentlemanly manner, but a raised eyebrow left no one in doubt as to what he thought of any small-mindedness or misuse of power. Notwithstanding his more than 50 years in New Zealand, Michael remained a Yorkshireman. He played golf to win and debated to convince. Even 92 years of life was not short, or not too short for Michael to leave any wrong unscrutinized by his eagle eye. Indeed, he still had a couple of probing writing projects percolating in his computer, but sadly, these will not see the light of day. I thank Michael in particular for his very long friendship with my family. He and Jerry Cook, another wonderful Rosminian, were a part of my family holiday when I was a boy, and even as a teenager, I would delight in seeing him draw up to our family home, for I knew conversation would be lively and nurturing of mind and soul. Michael, you embraced with infectious enthusiasm all that was asked of you. Thank you for your generosity of spirit and the embodiment of your Rosminian charism. In times of fragmentation, when the church can turn in on itself, your big picture faith was a welcome source of horizon and hope for many. Thank you for your courageous witness to the Lord of life. Charles. So we've listened to a Father General and a Bishop, and now we're going to listen to ordinary, shall we say, lay people who view Michael in a different light altogether. And first, we begin with the sisters, though. Sister Josie Dolan. Josie and I began together with Michael at St. Peter's way back in 1970.
I feel I might need to stand a little to the side so that this bit can be seen. Nā mai haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi kia koutou. Michael was never one to limit himself to a few words, as I've been asked to do today. The consummate teacher, he was ever ready to make use of any occasion to pass on knowledge, challenge thinking, broaden concepts, and explore ideas. As Aidan said, Michael, Aidan and I joined the staff of St. Peter's Gore in 1970. Michael, an unassuming, humble man, became part of a team that was full of strong individuals, and not just individuals, but characters. Father Lance Herdage, Brother Tedesco, Bucky and Father Buckner, and Sister Mary David, in later times, Sister Pauline Gallagher. In this mix, Michael, having his own rigour, was very able to quietly yet firmly hold his ground. In the staff room, where there were frequently robust discussions, his measured, thoughtful, and frequently humorous contributions often gave him the last word, even when Aidan was involved. Michael was a gentleman as well as a gentleman. I never saw him angry, frustrated, and as Aidan commented last night, he could be irritated, but never angry. As a colleague and as a principal, he was kind, supportive, and professional. I found him approachable and very easy to work with. He would listen to ideas, suggestions, and look for solutions and pathways to achieve the best possible outcomes for staff, students, parents, the school, and the wider college community. As a teacher, he was dedicated, patient, encouraging. He was fair and enthusiastic, and he was respected. He had his students' best interests at heart. Always positive, he expected the best from them. He was thorough and practical. And this approach extended beyond the classroom to other aspects of teaching. And I experienced this at a personal level because Michael had the task of preparing us to get a heavy traffic licence needed to drive the school minibus. So completely thorough was he, we were totally confident that having satisfied Michael, we would flow through anything that any driving examiner could possibly throw at us. He put his heart into participating in any and every school activity, whether it was the senior formal, the folk dance evening, the staff choir at the Eisteddfod, athletics day, the school fair, the senior netball team versus the staff, where, as a defence player, he was far too much of a gentleman to really challenge the shoots. And so not all that helpful, really. Far more effective with a hockey stick in hand when the staff took on the senior girls team. Maybe that was closer to his expertise with the golf club. One game he certainly enjoyed was on the last day of the school year when the staff engaged in an afternoon of golf, supposedly social, but it was here Michael's allegedly non-competitive spirit erupted. We're talking golf here, to at least the level of an eagle, if not an albatross. It could be said, in all that Michael gave to St. Peter's, his greatest contribution was the chapel. It was his strong wish there would be a suitable, sacred space central to the spiritual and faith-based life of the college community. And this came from the depth of his own strong faith and spiritual fidelity. It was an immense project to which he gave enormous amounts of energy and time and worked tirelessly to achieve, supported by many equally hard-working, committed people who shared his dream. And his vision was to build a different style of chapel which would give a sense to those present of being included in whatever was taking place in that sacred space, whether prayer, reflection or learning, Mass for the school community, or any other of the various occasions for which the chapel is used. A great talker, Michael loved language. His favourite party piece was a lengthy folk poem which he took great delight in reciting, using different voices for the various characters. And he merged this love of language with his passion for writing. Having written 3 books, he had already begun researching his next publication, which was to be a history of the Dunedin diocese. This interest of his in the Dunedin diocesan project showed me another aspect of Michael. He lived fully in the present context, in the reality in which he was living at the time. He lived in his now. During his time at St. Peter's, Michael made many really good friends in the wider school community, friends who continued to be important to him and with whom he kept in contact over many years. Michael was a man of passions, many passions. He loved life. He loved being a Rosminian. He loved Antonio Rosmini, golf, tuimotu, writing, Italy. Did I mention golf? Entertaining, teaching, sometimes cooking, prayer, people in general, exchanging ideas, lasting friendships, and St. Peter's. Michael's heart never really left St. Peter's. He was always ready to return to the school and be part of any activity, program, or celebration that was happening. In January of this year, I drove Michael to the staff retreat day prior to the school year beginning. Not something I'd actually planned to do, but Michael's argument that the Rosmini and Mercy charisms were part of the day's program, and it was really important that we be there to support that, was unanswerable. And I'm so pleased I did, as that day and a following journey to Gore for the opening of the opening Mass of the college year were 2 very special times I had with Michael. This latter being his last attendance at St. Peter's, the school he loved dearly. Michael, enjoy now meeting Rosmini, Antonio Rosmini, your loved ones, the many very dear friends, waiting to welcome you, and to knowing fully the God you served with such faith all your years. Nō reira, kia oiki oiki, ia I runga I te rangi Mariae. Michael, rest now in the peace of divine love.
Thank you indeed, Sister Josie. Some lovely reflections and memories there. To be followed by another one, this time from Paul Ferris.
Ngā mihi niu koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm sure we've all got memories to share of Michael, and I'm not sure why I've had the privilege of sharing mine, but I do appreciate it. I came home from university in the late 60s to find my parents highly engaged in their faith, which was very different from the faith of just practice that we'd been raised with for so many years. And suddenly, through Aidan and Michael and the other Rosminians, they were really enthusiastic about faith and life and the way you lived it. And so Michael and Aidan, but Michael particularly, at many things, weddings, funerals, picnics, parties, and across all the times for our family. He married my sister, who's here today, and many years later their daughter as well. And he married members of our family and attended all these occasions, all with us great. In latter years, parents visited several times from England, and they would stay with my mother in Gore, and she regarded Michael as her son. He had enough of her own, really, but she seemed to get a few extra. He would visit us in Queenstown as well, because he often did supply there, and particularly when he was in Christchurch. I think the only time I saw him upset was when I threw him and Father Buckner in the front of the old Land Rover and take them through the Macetown track on the way to Macetown, and we got stuck in the river with Michael up to his waist in water and breathing very heavily and trying. He didn't do the nose thing, but it was very clear that it wasn't his most enjoyable occasion. Over the weekend, we watched a video at home of the day that my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we saw the way that Michael was there in that video and then walked with Dad for 2 years until his death. And the quality of that relationship can be shown in the letter that Dad wrote to each of us siblings before his death. And in it he wished not wealth and prosperity for all of us, that would have been nice, but he wished us an enriched faith in the life of Jesus Christ. And that was Michael's gift to Dad. And it came through in the way he lived and walked with Dad. I knew Michael as a principal because I was one too, as a quiet, firm leader. Very much more personal experience of him, but he moved in so many ways around the principles in a quiet, gentle way. He then moved to the National Catechetical Office, the National NCRS, and along with many hundreds of other teachers and pastoral lay leaders, I did that 3-year course with Michael and to tutor with it for him. Charism became very obvious. A colleague of mine reminded me just this last 2 days of a time in the 70s when we were at a dinner party with 3 young couples having a very serious debate about the church in the post-Vatican world. And I picked up the phone and rang Michael and asked him to come and referee in the middle of the dinner party. Michael came from St. Peter's and stayed several hours ensuring that we did not walk away from the church, but became engaged and enlivened with it. Shortly after leaving NCRS, he was asked to ensure that we had a responsive Catholic press by Bishop Boyle, and he was the establishing editor of Tuamotu. And with the support of the Dominicans and the Josephites, he built a wonderful magazine that still goes today. He had the respect of all those who worked with him, but he was uncompromising in his desire to have a very fine press with really good material. And it was his time at Tuamotu that he also had this thespian side when he went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival taking a play written by the late Mike Riddell on Jerusalem. And Tuamotu has come on to be a wonderful voice for the church. Only last year he was seen having Christmas dinner with the staff at the Tuamotu. And he never lost interest in the direction or the content of what it said. But he could be quite particular to the point of being upset if the font of one of the items changed. Always a man of detail. More recently, he wrote books, obviously, Blessed Antonia Rosmini, and Michael embraced that Rosmini code of charity fulfills the law in all his dealings. It was his warmth, his listening, and his ability to hear and not judge that made his support for the Rosminian charism so very genuine. And recently I had a contact from Sir David Skegg, who's the ex-Vice-Chancellor here, who told me he'd met Michael in the Ross home while David was visiting his mother. And he extolled his qualities and said how much he enjoyed meeting him. He summarised Michael as a gentleman who'd never lost his enthusiasm for his people or his mission. Michael was a very talented and clever man. I cannot tell you what he studied because I don't think he ever told me, but I don't think that was important. I can tell you that we were very fortunate to have this very wonderful English gentleman priest decide to spend his life in New Zealand.
And thank you, Paul, too, again for some very strong, effective memories and the impact that Michael had had. And we conclude now with another little reflection from Martin Chamberlain.
Kia ora koutou. It is good for us to be here. Good for us to be able to honour someone who is an excellent man. My association with Michael started in 1970, when as a very young man from metropolitan Western Southland, I arrived at the recently opened St Peter's College and was greeted immediately by this excellent man. This man who was suave, this man who spoke so beautifully, and it's wonderful to hear that similar voice through Aidan today. This man of sophistication, this man who taught me science and gave me a lifelong love of that subject because, as well as working in the humanities, he was virtually through med school, I believe, when he turned to a vocation as a Rosminian priest. So this man had a big influence on my life, and really many things that happened later on were because of the excellence and the example that he gave. He was also able to sum me up. My end-of-year school report had the comment, "It is very obvious that Martin's talents are not to be sought on the sports field." And quite early in that first year, he became a very strong family friend of both of my parents, in a similar vein to what Paul is mentioning. And my parents had a deep respect for this man, but also a deep affection. And it's with sadness that my elderly mother can't make the trip from New Plymouth today to be here, but she has deep, fond memories of Michael. You've heard of his many achievements, and in all of them, he brought excellence, he brought calibre, he brought spirituality, and he brought faithfulness to the work that was ahead of him. And he turned his hand to many, many things in his life. There was no gentle retirement for Michael Hill. And in all of these things, I think all of you out there were the beneficiaries in many aspects, and we have to give thanks for that today. So as Michael meets his maker, he's the man in the parable who was given 10 talents, and he returned more than 10 talents. He was a good, faithful servant, but a man who practiced excellence in everything he did, and with kindness. Charles Drennan mentioned that he fought battles with his pen. I never saw ego in Michael, and people who knew him less well might have thought, well, that guy thinks a lot of himself, the way he speaks and the intellectual discourse he comes forward with. But it wasn't for the sake of ego or reputation, it was for the sake of justice. And that's why he became editor of the Tablet, and also the refreshing journalism he brought to New Zealand through Tui Motu. So farewell, Michael. You'll be in the bosom of a creator who was greatly appreciative of what you did with your talents for the rest of us. An excellent man.
And again, some very powerful thoughts and memories and reflections. But we will conclude, and then we'll be able to stand up. Father Jeff. on behalf of the Christchurch Diocese, where Michael worked for nearly 10 or 12 years.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon, everyone. I feel it's a tremendous privilege to be here and to listen to what we've just heard. I come because I had a personal friendship with Michael, which started when he was working in the Diocese of Christchurch. Bishop Michael, I come to also on behalf of the diocese, our own Bishop Michael Gielan. I explained to him how Michael Hill and Father Jerry Cook had made a tremendous contribution to our diocese in the years that they were there. I was working as the Director of Religious Education at the time, and I met Michael in that capacity, and we became lifelong friends. And I valued him as a fellow priest friend, and I had the privilege of visiting him from time to time. So I personally, and on behalf of our diocese, we give thanks to the Rosminian fathers for their contribution, but especially dear Michael. Thank you for all you did for us, all you gave to us, all you meant to us. Your friendship is something I have always valued, and that's why I'm here today. May you rest in peace.
And thank you, Father Jeff. Now we can all stretch and